Welcome to the Soul Patch Podcast, the podcast where three American expats explore different topics related to living and working in South Korea. With a combined 45 years of living experience in Asia, there are plenty of stories to tell. So, pop in your headphones and make yourself comfortable. It's time for the Soul Patch Podcast.
My tainted perception distorts, my true meaning is blurred. I am lost to the echoes and whispers.
But I did a little bit of research really quickly while you were getting your coffee. And the top companies building the Metaverse right now are Epic Games, which is, have you ever heard of Fortnite? I think I've seen people play it on YouTube, but I've never actually played the game.
My nephew is big into it, I think.
Yeah, it looks so difficult. Like I couldn't even. I haven't played video games since like Super Nintendo. So to come back now and look at Fortnite, you need like a engineering degree or something to.
I feel like there's a lot more like flashing lights in video games. This is like that's probably the. I probably just dated myself by saying that. Like,
but
I'm officially old now.
I know
like,
what you mean, though. It looks like what they used to in the 80s. You know, be careful. You might if you have seizures or something. You know, like some kid watching a Japanese animation movie and they have a seizure. That's the way it all looks to me these days.
Yeah, it's like this video game is too fast. That's the feeling I get when I see that stuff.
No,
Just
we're dating ourselves for sure.
Slow it down.
Right. Just give me the little, two-dimensional, the grid that I can, climb up the wall or whatever. And
Yeah, you don't need 3 dimensions. What are these kids thinking?
I don't know. It looks like chaos to me. I can't make heads or tails of it, but so does StarCraft, which has a more rudimentary kind of looking graphics, but it still just looks like a mess. I can't figure out. I can't make heads or tails of it. But Epic Games would be looks like a good company for building a metaverse because they already have this infrastructure of these huge swaths of real estate where the game takes place. So it would be a good place. Facebook's Meta is building I think we've seen examples of it with Zuckerberg in a conference room with his avatar.
Yeah, I think everybody's seen this.
It looked it looked like kind of reminded me of like the Nintendo not Switch but the Nintendo Wii character. Yeah, kind of right. They didn't have any legs, but I don't know. Didn't look good. Not impressed. Niantic, Nvidia, Microsoft, Decentraland, and Apple all have their own plans for a metaverse. So
yeah.
That's the weird thing about Metaverse is that there are multiple universes that you can just jump into. Is that, I mean, what is the Metaverse exactly? Like, what does it mean to you?
I'm by no means like, an expert. I haven't spent any time. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I've considered, everybody's like probably at this point probably thought about it because it's been thrown in our face so much in especially last year, especially with Facebook switch over to Meta. I see like a natural extension, right, would be from games. So there's like video games that are collaborative, that are online, that have like virtual spaces. So, like we talked about this in a different podcast, like Cyworld in Korea, Second Life. So a natural extension of those gaming worlds, Roblox, stuff like this. But the idea of using these virtual spaces for more productive means, which is what like that little trailer that Meta put out is trying to imply what they're pivoting towards. So they want to go from, this isn't just a place, they showed in that trailer too, playing games and stuff, this like they're shooting each other, which seems to be an important thing to do in video games.
Because we can't just have gun violence in the real world. We also need to include it in
I'm just so bored with seeing that image of like games where people are like just shooting each other. It's like, all right, I get it. Like we like that. And they're maintaining that. It's still in their trailer. You can see it's like this first person shooting thing going on.
Yeah.
But the biggest pitch in that, what is it? They're talking about being productive. So you're going to hold your meetings in the metaverse. You're going to, do your yoga in the metaverse. what do you think? Like, do you see yourself in the next 5 years, like instead of doing yoga in the living room and, are you going to put on a headset, put on a helmet? You're going to put a helmet
Put on
on to do yoga?
my yoga helmet and my yoga mat.
Hmm.
I probably do need a helmet when I do yoga. I'm so clumsy. But no, the way I see it is I think there is an act, especially in the midst of a pandemic. I can really start to see the the practical application of something like a metaverse for education, because we're teachers, so I'm always thinking like, how does this translate to a classroom? I could see, I mean, you're almost doing it, we're almost doing it already, right? I mean, what is Zoom other than kind of a version of a metaverse, where we're
Yeah.
creating a space where we're together but we're actually miles and miles apart, and you could be in America right now for all intents and purposes. I mean, it doesn't matter where we are
Well,
as long as you
I
have an
had
internet connection.
I had a really impressive situation last semester. So last semester, working online, I had a student, and this isn't the first student I've had with like a uh, disability, but this is the first time I've worked with a student with a disability online because of COVID. So this student was deaf, um, and working with a classroom like assistant. Now, I've had this before. This is not actually the first deaf student that I've had. So you can imagine the challenges that come with this, and that's why there's a specialist that joins the student in the classroom. So this specialist joined my classroom on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
The specialist, the assistant, and the student, and myself, we are all in different cities.
Yeah.
Like, how wild is that?
Yep.
So the assistant's not with the student physically. For me, that really surprised me because I didn't think about that until after I was teaching the class for a while, and it suddenly occurred to me. I'm like, holy crap! What they had was the assistant was using software that was on the student's screen,
Oh, I see. Putting up the
and
writing, basically
I
translating what you're saying, or
yeah, so a lot of speed typing, both in English and in Korean, and also providing like small commentary.
yeah.
So I talked to her a little bit after the class. She contacted me. Just we were discussing about how we work together, and so I got a little bit of a picture of how that was done. But it really made me think about technology and how it applies to teaching, specifically working through teaching languages and communication.
Yeah.
So I make a joke about how I think you wouldn't want to have a helmet on when you're doing yoga, but I do think there can be applications for education in the metaverse, or things that are more cognitive tasks
Mm-hmm.
versus physical. Like people talking about putting on your goggles and going jogging, so it's like you're running in the I don't know, the desert or something. Yeah, it sounds cool on paper, but I don't want some crap in my head bouncing around. And I
Yeah.
mean, even if it's lightweight, I just want to go run. I mean, the whole point of I love running, and the reason I do it is because I want to get out. I want to be,
Yeah. Uh,
uh,
I'm interested in that, in the VR world. I mean, I like it for its kind of gimmickiness or whatever. I don't know if that's a word, but but I don't know if I want to stay that, spend lots of time in that world. That's the thing.
yeah.
I think it's kind of fun now because it's novel, but if this just became our regular lives where we spend most of our time inside of a virtual world in a metaverse instead of outside in a real, the
Yeah.
universe, it almost is kind of depressing to me. Like to just go to a VR room and walk the plank. You take you go into a building, you take an elevator up to the 100th floor, and then you walk out on a plank, and you try to pick up a cake. That's like one of the games, and it feels like you're I don't know, 1,000 feet in the air, and if you slip, and you're gonna die. And so you get that sensation of that, and it's very cool. But I don't is do we need to replicate the sensation of like sitting down in a room together, Or
Well, yeah, so that's my point. Okay, so like the first thing you describe is like the novelty, right? So the game type of thing, it's pretty fun. Like we can trick our brains because we're largely visual apes, right? So
right.
we can have this feeling of heights or roller coasters and stuff. Cool. That's what that is. That's cool.
Yeah.
And you can sell a lot of widgets on things that are cool. But functionally, do I need to have a virtual space for a meeting? Well, as a it could be a utility that's useful in times like, hey, COVID, we're all locked down. Wouldn't it be cool if I could still be in the classroom and actually like feel like I'm looking at my students at their desks versus being on Zoom and just having like these headshots, not being able to direct my eyes towards people? That's the hardest part, right? Teaching on Zoom, the thing that I hate is I'm always gesturing to my students. I'm like, oh, and what do you think? Oh, what about you? Hey, what about you? They have
Yeah.
no idea
Well,
where I'm going
that's
here.
the question. Is that ability, the ability to look at your students in the eye, is that just something that's cool and novel, or is that actually a game changer? So for
Oh,
me
I
in
think I think
ESL, it
it's
might be
really
a
useful,
game
right?
changer. Yeah.
Yeah, like because I want to be able to not just talk to my students, but I want to be able to say like, hey, why don't you ask him? I want to be able for them to be able to look around, to be present. So in the metaverse, I see that as like possible, but like what you're saying, is it ever going to be better?
Yeah, that's the question. And yeah, because I can now teach the class in the avatar of a dinosaur, a T-Rex or something, is not it's not going to count for extra points for practicality. But I do like the idea of, like, let's say you have 20 students in a classroom or 21 students, and I want to break up the groups into 7 groups of 3 students. I could see in a metaverse where I could just like grab just 3 people and just kind of with my pointer or whatever, put them in a little group, or send them to another room or something where they can work together on a task. That is different than Zoom. Zoom has the breakout room ability, but it's a little bit different. I think I would like to be able to jump into the rooms more easily, and I like the idea of it like being a virtual classroom with a infinite number of rooms that you could just create a room and a space for students to do an activity. That's even better than reality, because you're still stuck in this classroom where students
Mhm.
are trying to make groups, and you're moving desks and everything. What if you could immediately just have them in their own room where you could jump in and out so easily?
Or just like having them like split apart in the same room. Well, I looked at Meta's website for developers or whatever.
Hmm.
Just trying to, that's basically what they have up right now, is just showing you like what you could build with it and what you could do. And it's, you can download, I guess, the app, and like any 12-year-old could play with this. And it's like Roblox. You could like, that's what it looks like. You like
Right.
build a virtual space. You can collaborate with a friend and do some freestyle architecture. I guess that's what the kids are into now. But I started like going through some of the choices in the menus, and one of the things you could choose is how your voices work. So your voice could carry like through the whole space that you built, or it could be like near field, I think. So like you and I, if you want to hear my voice, it's relative to our distance in the metaverse.
Yes.
So
Okay.
that's one thing that I really did not, it was so difficult doing Zoom classes online. The breakout rooms, it's not that I don't trust my students to be in a room working on whatever I tell them to, or a task I have them working on. It's just that I can't be involved at a distance. And that's often how I run my room. So I might be with a group over here talking. My presence, I'm still with the group behind me, right?
Yeah.
And I'm still listening with half of my brain. And when I'm done here, I'm just over here. I'm with you. And I can also, again, I can like take a student here and I'd be like, hey, you know what you're doing? Check out what they're doing over here. Here, come here for a second. I want you to see this.
And you
And
just snap your fingers and boom, they're right there.
yeah, but I'm thinking like, instead of having different rooms, I could just like have one room just like I do now.
And just
And
make it
I'm literally,
bigger. That's
yeah.
a
And
great
I'm
point.
moving
I actually agree with you, because getting separate rooms is no different than doing a breakout room in Zoom. But
yeah.
if what you like, what I kind of like is the idea of like a large classroom where all the groups are in the same room and you're bouncing from group to group, that you can't do on Zoom. And that's
Yeah.
like what you said, I can still hear what's going on behind me. And there probably will be, in the future where when they could probably imitate real sound, relationships, through an
Well,
algorithm or whatever.
that's what the feature looked like
Yeah.
on Meta. If you want to design your room, it was implying that that's how that would work. So as you approach somebody, your voice would increase in volume or would only trigger at a certain distance. So I guess we're kind of coming to my question, which is not, is there a utility for it? Because obviously there is. Like what we're describing is clearly better than Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
But could you see this usurping the physical classroom? Is it possible to be better? Is the metaverse better? Teaching our class, think of our courses that we teach. Would we be better off in the metaverse than back on campus, as we probably will be next semester?
This is a very interesting question. Now, if I were teaching like an architecture class or something, I said, let's take a look at Notre Dame. In the classroom, I'm limited on what I can do, right? I could show a video, and there's probably some drone going through, Notre Dame, and, or we could, analyze the structures and the things. Or in the metaverse, I could say, all right, strap in, everybody, get on your roller coaster. We are on the drone. Look at this, how this piece buttresses against this other piece or whatever. Did you know that this is load bearing, or this is just decorative, and you can really, really go places that you would never be able to go visually. That would be,
okay. So I can dig that, but like, how is that? To me, that doesn't sound like it's usurping the classroom. That sounds like it's complementing it. So like much how when I guess it happened back when I was in graduate school or even earlier, like we always had, overhead projectors, like in high school, like, okay. Again, for any listeners out there, we are 40s year olds. So we've seen it all. So, your microfiche.
Yeah, I remember that stuff.
So, having, you wheel in the TV with the VCR to show, your videos. And then what we use in our classrooms, obviously we have an AV station. So we have, I can pull down the overhead. I can show my PPT. I can show video. I've got access to the internet. I can have students interact with any of that content as well. So what you're describing sounds more like that. Like we could be in a classroom studying architecture and be like, okay, everybody put on your glasses.
It's more like an augmented reality, right? Put your Google glasses on. We're going on a virtual journey. I guess I can't, the only thing I could think of that would be the upside of the metaverse would be maybe the not having to travel to the classroom. So there'd be, this is something that you could use for less pollution, less travel. If students were not taking the bus or driving cars or whatever.
And economically for students too, they don't have to like live in the dorms and come to campus. That's a hard thing easy to forget, but for a lot of freshman students, if you're going to live on campus, dorm rooms aren't cheap. And if you could just stay where you are, especially in a place like Korea, where the economies can be so different between, like, you have half the population in Seoul in the urban center here. And if you come from the countryside, you're talking about, black and white difference in your finances and your daily costs.
Absolutely. Now the sacrifice is the social interaction will also probably take place in the virtual space as well, though. And so is that can that fill the soul? This is getting very philosophical as much as like actual human touch, being around people, because it'll fundamentally change the university experience. I mean,
that's where it's at, right? So that's the question. I didn't think of it that way. That's what it is. It's not just about like, would you learn something, but it's like, would the university experience be replicable? I mean, no. Like,
I don't think so, because I think at the end of the day, you play a game, but it doesn't. If I go to school and I have an interaction with a real human being, that imprints on my memory and so much more strongly than if I were to have a social networking encounter with somebody. Even in a Zoom, it's not the same as a an actual social interaction. There's something about I don't know if it's a neurochemical thing or you know, I mean, it's probably just we're trying to buck like you know, million years of evolution in a generation, you know, with this metaverse stuff. It's like we can't our bodies can't catch up to that adjustment, you know.
Yeah, but at the same time, like that whole college experience, like the parts of it that we're talking about erasing by going into the metaverse, there might be some loss, but it might be acceptable loss. Like, I mean, we don't have like teenagers these days are not going to sock hops and drive through burger joints and, you know, like, yeah, right. Like no one's tricking out their hot rods anymore.
The homecoming dance or whatever.
There was an article I read, was in Wired or something, like it was years ago. Like teenagers are no longer like pimping out their hot rods. You know, they're not into their cars anymore. It's like how cool they can make their PC or like their Facebook page or something. I mean, it was like years ago, and it's good. It's kind of a hyperbolic type of example, maybe, but that point, I mean, yeah, that culture has been lost, right? And that was a very social aspect of high school. Like high school used to be a place where, I mean, you look at all the old movies and stories and everything. I mean, in 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, even high school was a place where you'd potentially meet your boyfriend or girlfriend. It was really important because that's probably who you get married to when you graduate, like when you're 19, 18. And so that's why that's a big theme. And now, if you look at stories, movies, media of like high school, what is that iconography? What does that look like? What's the narrative there? It's not about the TikTok dating stuff
video
so
and
it's more about like tests, exams, getting to university, the next step, friends separating, going their directions. There's still dating and stuff, but it's not the same as what it was if you're watching like Grease or something. Was Grease about dating? I remember. What am I thinking of?
Kind of, yeah.
No. So I'm just wondering if like maybe we might not like that we're going to lose the university experience, you know, like freshman students jumping into the fountain, you know, like this kind of thing. You know? Like all that stuff, MT.
Because if the metaverse can provide enough of an experience, like a deep enough experience that can mimic or match what the physical experience and maybe in some ways transcend the actual physical experience because I guess your abilities within the metaverse are you're not bound by physics any longer. The laws of physics do not apply. And so whatever your imagination or the imagination of the software developers is, whatever the capacity to imagine a reality, that's the limit. It's no longer gravity or, you know, like cost, whatever. It doesn't cost you anything. So I just wonder, is it inevitable that the metaverse will replace it? But my bigger question is everything going to be corporate in the metaverse? I mean, is it going to be sponsored by, you know, if every single thing we use is going to have some kind of logo, a corporate logo, or you got to buy your Meta bucks so that you can go to the Meta stationery store to get your Meta notebook and I mean, these are the things that I worry about, is the kind of dystopian corporate reality versus a kind of more pure learning experience. So that's the question for me
well, I mean, I guarantee if someone's going to try to make a buck, I mean, that's how it all exists, right? I don't know. I could think of some things that would be beneficial in like our courses where we're trying to practice like conversation and public speech. Like very often I have students that are in groups. Maybe you have a student who's being a little distracting or is going off topic or is choosing to because we're working through English, right? So that they're speaking Korean too often. I could actually like just mute them, which is kind of great. I could just be like,
that's like a Black Mirror episode or something. And you're right. You could
basically, if you want to talk to your friends, you got to be on topic, bro.
Yeah.
You're back on.
Gosh. The classroom control. I mean, again, you're bound by no you're bound by nothing, you know, but there's
or like if a student really is being disruptive, you could, I mean, I would never do this, but could you pick up the student, just throw them out the window, you know? Like,
just
yeah.
toss them out of there's probably just some like Doctor Strange like warp, you know, circle that or
Oh
warp
yeah,
field,
yeah,
and just
yeah.
anyone that anytime you just, you know, it ticks you off, you just throw them to the I
Oh,
don't know.
I was thinking something much more graphic. It could be like more like Dr. Evil, you know, like I can push the button and the chair open, the floor opens up and it goes down to
Just go
lava.
into
You know?
yeah, alligator pit or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Now I like it.
so
Now I like it.
I do too, yeah. And you know, you can be nice to you know, teacher can pick your avatar, so you know, you could be you know, anybody you want. You could have class delivered by Mickey Mouse 1 week and Donald Duck the next, I guess.
Yeah, it could be topic. It could be topical, right?
If you
Like today,
paid
we're going to talk
your
about.
you got to, yeah, but the thing is, I do think that there is going to be an application for it. I just don't know if it'll happen in the next 5 years. I things, time is so dilated these days, though. It wouldn't surprise me if they didn't have something that was so what the word so appealing to
Yeah,
universities,
compelling.
especially like tech forward countries like Korea, where they're kind of
Mhm.
on the precipice of the newest technology all the time. It wouldn't surprise me if that didn't become, you know, there, if like we have this Blackboard system where that we can do grading and stuff on, if they didn't create some kind of university platform, Metaverse, that was just for
Yeah,
university students, it wouldn't
I
surprise
I
me.
I do see that where in education systems broadly, there's an effort to adapt the latest and greatest. Even going back to when I was in graduate school, there was a conversation. Oh, you know this, like blended learning. That's a
Hmm.
very, very buzzy phrase that is very old. And blended learning, you know, referring to using both, you know, technology and traditional classrooms. Okay, so education systems globally, everywhere, every level, you're always going to see this kind of enthusiasm for the latest tech and trying to get it involved because we can make education better, right? We're going to make you learn better. You know, that's a thing. But at the same time, education systems by design, they move slow in their adaptation. Like if you look
Sure.
at, we're in 2022, and if you look at a basic classroom like we are in the center of Seoul, major university, huge city, tech forward country, and you look at our classroom design, what do we have? You have one teacher, lecturer, standing on stage, and you've got an audience of 20 to 200 students in front of you,
Yeah.
sitting in chairs. This in the lectern, the whole show. I mean, yeah, you no longer have like chalk; it's now a marker. You know, it's a dry erase board instead of a chalk. But
Yeah.
how different is that from like, you know, a couple hundred years ago at a university? Like, what was it? What were they doing at Cambridge when they opened? You know,
Right, because it's
it's really
not,
like,
is the paradigm that much different? I mean, it started with, you know, a
yeah,
couple hundred years ago at Oxford, the guy was describing the situation, and 200 years later we're watching it on a movie screen from a
yeah,
projector. But it's still, the information is still essentially the same, you know. It's just, yeah, I could describe, it can give you a description of this, or you can look
yeah.
at it now on a movie screen. But the
Maybe come back
paradigm
and,
is,
and talk about the paradigm shift when not when we're putting like, you know, not when we're putting new things on a screen or strapping goggles to our face. I think those things will stay as tools in the traditional setting.
yeah.
I think you'll see a major difference when, like, you know, the Neuralink type stuff where we're
Mhm.
actually like downloading data into our heads or something.
When we're
Okay,
changing the actual
then
brain
classrooms,
chemistry, yeah, yeah,
yeah. Then
or
I think classrooms might die away or evolve to something totally new. But
right,
I don't know.
because you
I'm
just give
old
me the
fashioned.
English input, you know, and
Yeah.
download, click down. It's the matrix. You know, the other thing that I think is going to be interesting would be AI, like an AI assistant teacher. You know, somebody, some sort of simplistic AI in the metaverse that is able to answer very simple questions for students, but they're running simultaneously while the teacher is running the classroom. So you're getting ready, you're organizing a task or whatever, but some students are, you know, have simpler questions like, what does this word mean? Well, instead of me taking my time to answer that, why don't they just interact with some AI that can help them with the very simple questions? And then as time goes by, obviously AI will get more sophisticated, but a very simple AI will be able to answer a lot of questions, you know, that the students would have.
That's kind of an interesting point. Now I'm seeing something else. Okay. Okay. So maybe in near term, I could see this. Already, there's a decoupling of experts in a field and educators, right? So in a situation like in a high school or elementary school, absolutely, you have teachers who get their master's degrees in education, and they might have a little bit of a specialization in something that allows them, maybe they'll be preferentially chosen to teach science or something like this. Honestly, it's been over a decade since I've been involved in looking at this stuff closely. So I mean, talking
I'm sure
a
it's
little
still
bit out of my
very
ass here,
similar though. Yeah.
but it might still have these effects. But my point is that education is getting having a skill, the skill of educating, is being prioritized over the specialization of the stuff that you might know. So in university, this gets sticky. It gets to be a problem, right? Because you can be really good at lecturing, communicating, educating, working with a student, but you might not be an expert in like nuclear physics. So you can't do that. So you need to have both as a skill to be a great teacher. And you'll still be chosen for your expertise in nuclear physics and your ability to teach that subject secondarily, which is not a good situation for students, right? They're struggling. They're working with this really smart person. So that person needs an educator alongside them. So wouldn't it be better if you had a classroom that had both running simultaneously? I mean, I guess both could be AIs running simultaneously with each other, but let's say that you wanted one just to be the data dump. It just needed to be like the source of answers
just
to the
information,
questions.
just answers to questions, right? Just raw data,
right?
You know, kind of, yeah.
And then you have the either very humanoid AI, or, you know, in the near term, a human that has a background in education, has a rough idea of the general concepts that are to be taught, and can interface with students in a social and natural way to help take them through the content.
Yeah.
But the AI that's just better at cataloging, indexing, and referencing. I mean, it's kind of what we do in the classroom, right? Like I do typically every semester a little bit of a mini lecture series for about, I split it over 3 weeks, where I talk about the history of language, history of the evolution of English. And it's just meant to get the students enthusiastic about what they're doing, give them a little bit of fresh air for this topic that they've been grinding since they're born, right? And so it's just meant to be lighthearted and fun. I'm not an expert in this subject. I've read a lot of books on it because I find it interesting. And I've read enough that I can organize these lectures. And I've been teaching these lectures for over a decade, and I've added to them and I've refined them. So I'm very confident of what I'm speaking about. That doesn't mean that students don't come up with questions for me during these lectures. And when this happens, what do you think I do? I've got a Google right next to me.
Yeah, sure.
I love what the students
You're not a linguistic historian. You're not able to just pull those little questions out, but they're right there on Google.
Yeah, and I level with the students. I mean, they know this from day one, but even when I'm doing these types of lectures, I'm not trying to like come off like some arrogant asshat. I tell them like throughout the entire time, like, you know, take these things with a grain of salt. If you want more information, you need to look at this and this and this, because, you know, remember guys, I'm not a linguistics teacher here.
Yeah, but it just to go down that line that you of the lectures that you created there, I think that can shine light on things for students. They can put things together when you say, oh, did you know that all of our food words are actually French? Well, it's not just for no reason. You know, there's a there's a reason for that. And sometimes it kind of pops a light in there in like, wait a second, there is rhyme and reason to the insanity. You know, there's a reason why we say knife, but it's spelled with a K, you know, at the beginning. It's like,
the reason I, not to go too far off subject here, but the reason that I there's a couple other lectures that I've plugged into different classes over the years, but this is one that's been pretty consistent. And the reason I like it is because it takes a step back from the efficiency of learning language and communication skills. It's not efficient to consider the etymology of every word that you're learning. It's not efficient to learn the history of a language before you study the vocabulary, the grammar, the mechanics, and practice speech and listening. It's not an efficiency thing, but it creates an interest. And for a lot of these students who have spent like literally their whole lives struggling with learning a second language, it's been probably not so much fun. It kind of reminds them like, hey, you're not just learning like English language and, conversation skills, stage skills to perform in life. You're learning about a culture. Language is a culture, so it puts a little stoke back in them. So anyway, to the example of running a classroom with an AI, I could see when I'm doing those types of lectures that are really honestly outside my wheelhouse, right?
Sure.
That where I'm struggling. Often I'll go over, like, if that happens, I'm on Google, I'm ducking behind the lectern, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, sure. What was that you said? What were you asking? Okay. Yeah. Hey, do you want, just open your phone, see what you can find on Naver. Like, I do this, right?
Yeah.
But if you had an AI that was working in real time with you, that was like this little classroom buddy.
Just kind of turn and ask Jeeves, Jeeves.
Yeah, like this.
Up,
Jeeves.
Yeah.
Now you're old.
I know. I'm really dating myself there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and to have it happen in this like virtual space where it feels 3D, like you feel like you're sitting in a classroom, and the AI almost feels like another, like another sentient being in the classroom, even though it's just AI. That is a dynamic that could not exist in the real classroom, because you would have to, they'd have to hire a very, very smart person or an assistant with just a laptop that sits in there all day long and looks up stuff for you when you have questions. I also think like it would be helpful in, just in those moments where, especially you're getting, as my age gets older, spelling of a certain word, or grammatical structure that is maybe a little bit more complex, and trying to explain that for a student that has a question it'd be helpful to have some sort of AI that is able to kind of like isn't there an app you can download that is a grammar check or something? Grammarly?
Yeah.
It's kind of, it'd be kind of like an AI version of Grammarly that's just there to, make sure the information is spot on.
So I could see, like, going back to like Metaverse, is it possible? Will it be likely? And what would it look like potentially in our work, in our lives? I do think it's coming. I don't know how soon it would be, but now through this conversation, I'm definitely seeing maybe finally in evolution, a real like paradigm shift of the classic classroom. Like if you had a few things in place, one, you'd have to have everybody have to be comfortable with the hardware, whatever you're using. So very non-intrusive, cost effective, and useful in other applications. So again, would the universities and schools adapt it first? Probably not. It'd probably be something that is widely used first for, gaming or whatever.
It has to become cheap enough that people can afford it.
But it needs to have that ubiquitous quality. Like I remember when we started where we currently work at Chungang, smartphones didn't exist.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Actually, they just existed. They just came in. So you'd have a couple kids that had like, there would be an iPhone, but most people had, the 2G or whatever.
The flip phone. Yeah.
Yeah. I had students that had, remember the pocket dictionaries? Remember those things?
Yeah. Everybody had a pocket dictionary with like some sort of
digital
game
dictionaries
on there that you could play or something.
Yeah.
Right. Those were, we had one in my house actually. When I first started teaching at Chungang, we would watch, the book had a DVD, and we had 2 televisions mounted up on the corners of the room, just glass.
Oh my God, really?
Like that had like a tube in it, not even an LCD screen, but like a tube television, where we would watch the videos. And in that 17 years or 16 years that I've been there, I now have a movie screen with a beautiful, and we had chalk, when I first started. So chalk and a television, like a 1980s television,
Yeah. So like, I mean, I think the hardware can be adapted, but in the example of like the smartphones, I started using smartphones in the classroom. So there's certain lessons I have where I say, okay, everybody today, I need your phones out unlocked, and I need you to have your whatever translation app you prefer, go on Neighbor, whatever you got to do. You need to have it open right now. We're going to be searching for a lot of language, and I want you to see it with definitions in Korean right now in real time. And so I use smartphones. I do other exercises where I have students like, looking at photographs on their phones, and they have to describe it to their friend, and they have to like draw it and stuff. We do like crime scene stuff. It's hilarious. So yeah, I'll tell you that lesson some other
Great
time.
though.
That one's
Yeah,
that one's
yeah.
hilarious. But the point is, when smartphones came onto the market, I didn't immediately apply it to the classroom. I couldn't. There wasn't widespread adaptation. So what I'm thinking is, once there's widespread adaptation of some like AR VR system that everybody's using, the classroom could use it. If there was an AI that was sophisticated enough to function this way, I think the teacher's role in the classroom could evolve to being there would be a new name for it. You wouldn't be called
A
like a
facilitator instead of a lecturer,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You're
Facilitator.
facilitating learning, but you're not responsible for holding all of the knowledge in your little
Exactly.
human
And why
brain,
would and that makes
why
and
would
to
you?
me,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? Like even right now, if you're an expert in nuclear physics, you still aren't the holy grail. And that's actually a deficit to the students. And it's all well known. It's like if I go to this school and I study with this nuclear physicist versus this other one at this other school, I'm going to be getting something or losing something. Like that could be remedied. And that's pretty cool, right? But you'd
It
still
is
want to
cool.
have
Yeah.
that interpersonal.
I see that is more important in the metaverse than maybe the actual creating the 3D feeling of being in the classroom. I actually think that the AI application is actually more important.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, it's
So
fascinating.
what are we picturing? What are we picturing? So instead of it being something where it's like full on VR and we turn into like dinosaurs and Mickey Mouse and stuff like this,
Right.
maybe the first level of real world application would be more like AR, where just for the same reason that you'd have the facilitator there. I mean, why do they still exist? Because the AI is not able to, at least at this point, interact in the human type
And reading
social,
facial,
right,
facial cues
until
and that
that's yeah,
EQ,
maybe yeah,
yeah.
once that's solved, you'll have like you'll have robots that are able to perform just as well. But until that point, I think there's going to be a point. I mean, right now we're at that point where there's a vast amount of information that is available and indexed, and we're referencing it by telling students pick up your cell phone, or I'll check on Google. If that could be kind of automated away, but still in a humanoid type form. So it's in a 3D space. So it's referenceable. It's 3D, but in AR. So in my classroom, we can put on all of our glasses or whatever contacts or whatever you want to do.
And there's Jeeves
And
in the corner
yeah,
appears.
it's just like, yeah, I think I want him to have like a really nice mustache.
Yeah,
No,
he'll look kind of
right?
like the Monopoly Man or something. Or no,
Yeah,
it's
I
got to
don't know
look
why.
like it's got to kind of be avuncular, like a kind uncle or something. That's
Yeah.
I have a question. Oh, sweater vest, maybe something like that.
Yeah, he's
Bow
like always just
tie.
kind of a little bit distracted, eyes fluttering, like, oh,
Yeah,
oh, oh,
a
picks his
little
pipe.
highfalutin, but this to me, and I know we're kind of heading towards the end here, but the idea of like building a robot to teach in a real classroom seems insane to me compared to putting ourselves into a metaverse where you could build anything. It almost seems kind of silly now. Robotics almost seems kind of silly to me in the terms of thinking like like the robot assistant, that's just walking around your house, like, can I get you a drink? Like that idea seems so absurd to me in now that we're talking about a metaverse, because like putting ourselves into that space where, we could cohabitate with sentient and non-sentient AI, or sorry, non-sentient AI and ourselves, and we can interact together. That's really fascinating. I mean, that is, and you're right, AR, augmented reality, is the first step towards the virtual reality. And so we're not going to get to the VR. But I think it really has to do with the rollout of the metaverse. How big of a splash is this thing going to make? Whichever company feels like they've figured it out, have they cracked the code, and how crazily people go after this, I think will tell us like how quickly the university or the high schools are going to follow suit and start offering classes in the metaverse. So
yeah, there'll be some brave programs out there that try to experiment with it and do some fun things. It'll be really interesting to see what people build with it. I'm not poo-pooing it. I'm excited to see what they'll do as far as and I don't mind going on record saying this. I mean, not now anyway, who knows what they'll take over next, but I'm really hopeful that Meta and Facebook won't be the one to do it.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the one corporate slam.
Based on what
ever.
we've seen already,
Yeah.
I'm not,
We don't need more of that. Come on. We don't need more of it. We don't.
I was not impressed. But I'm sure like what Epic is coming up with will be, I guess we could teach the class. You look out the window, you're in the middle of the Amazonian jungle, or you're on the surface of Mars. I guess it depends on the mood of the class that day. That is kind of cool. I mean, I'm not going to say that's not a cool thing, but functionally, yeah, or practically, I think we'll get there. Would you volunteer for a class like that? If they said we have a VR class, a metaverse class, would you volunteer to teach that?
Yeah, man, you know me. I've always been like, anytime there's been an opportunity for even like, remember when we did those courses where I didn't end up teaching it, actually. I designed it. Didn't you design one of those where it was like we were teaching conversation in the topic of the student's major? So instead of them taking like the generic communications course, they took communication based on medical topics because they're medical
topics. Sports was one, business was another
one. We did this together years ago.
I designed some of the websites for that, but I didn't.
That's right. Yeah. So like stuff like this, I've always just, not because I even have faith in the success of it, I'm just always curious what people are like when they want to try something new. It just cracks me up to like be like just checking it out. Like I don't know if that was actually like the best idea ever, but I liked trying to develop it. I thought it was fun to do.
No, I think there's definitely, I think, kind of two types of teachers. I think some people are comfortable in the current paradigm and kind of are happy to finish their careers in that paradigm. And then people who are, I think people that kind of, it's hard for things not to get stale when you do it the same way over a course of many years. And so I think just out of like, just as like a vitamin B shot to the arm, doing something totally different would create a different feel, a different energy, and it would be just fascinating too. I would love to finish my career teaching in the metaverse. Like I'll be happy with that. I think I would like.
Wouldn't that be good? Yeah. That's a really cool, like, and again, even if it's not like for the better, like,
just okay, for the different,
right. Just it makes for a cool narrative of like what I did with my career. Like these past 2 years working with Zoom and Canvas and just basically like living inside my email inbox. Like, would I call this like the golden period of my career? Absolutely not. So far, I would probably call it like one of the worst parts. I do not like teaching on Zoom. And it's, maybe I need to learn how to do it, but I do need to learn how to do it better if this continues. But I like that I got the chance to do it. Yeah. And there's things I'm gonna take from this experience that I'm gonna keep on going with. Like I've adapted the e-class system in a way that I never would have had I not been presented with all of this complexity. Yeah. And man, it's useful, and I can apply it, I can share it. So yeah, if I had the opportunity to if I had to put on a big old PS4 thing, whatever they are now, these helmets, and teach with a helmet on, I'll teach with a helmet on.
It'd be better
no
if
legs.
Like little
no legs. Who needs legs?
A big helmet with a camera sticking out of it and some glasses in there. Like an alien. They better do something about the comfort of the tech, but my guess is they'll figure that out soon enough.
I hope it gets better, like a football helmet with like 2 antennas coming out.
Like
wearing a suit, walking into the lecture hall.
Yeah.
What's up, guys?
Sorry, I'm teaching now, and then just throw the mask over your face and start talking to yourself. Yeah, it'll be weird. Yeah, the real universe will get weird when everybody starts going into the metaverse. That'll be even more bizarre. Well, Ryan, thanks for the conversation today, man. That was a fascinating one.
This was
yeah,
fun.
I hadn't thought about it that deeply, but like I said, the Soul Patch is where we explore ideas, and so I'd say that was a good exploration right there.
Yeah.
For our listeners out there, you guys can find us at thesoulpatch.com. It's a one-stop shop. You can download it on multiple platforms right from the website. You can check out our YouTube channel. We've got the Soul Patch YouTube channel up and running, where I'll put the video of our podcast up there. And if you want to, buy us a cup of coffee, you have the ability to do that on our website. Just hit that Patreon button. And we'll see you next week on the patch. Thanks, everybody.
I'd like to pay a couple respects to the people that made me what I am today.
Nothing here.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
The quiet man.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Dopamine. Jim.
It's all my love. It's all my love. It's all my love.
The brain.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Hey, Bobby. Let the bass go. Call me an eater, call me a dominant. Long face.
It's all my love. It's all my love. It's all my love. Obsolete. It's all my love. It's all my love. It's all my love.
8-1.
And Zarkov. It's all my love. It's all my love. It's all my love.
T-V-V.
This is a pen pusher.
T-V-V. Call me an eater, call me a dominant.